A trucking company is going to work on at the time of the accident to control the case, to control their driver's liability.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Ask the Lawyers. I'm Leslie Rohde. So glad you're with us today. We're talking about accidents involving truck drivers, 18-wheelers we're talking about. And in today's world, with the COVID-19 pandemic going on, many of them are considered essential workers. They're getting our products to our homes and to our stores. We're fortunate today to have attorney Josh Hopkins with us. He is an attorney from Herrman Herrman in South Texas. Offices all included in San Antonio, Corpus Christi, McAllen, and Brownsville. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Let's start with this. If a person is injured in a car or a truck by an 18-wheeler, like we're talking about, in your experience with these cases, who is most likely responsible?
Well, there's two groups that are responsible. The driver, of course, who's driving the truck, but also his employer or the company he's driving for. So some drivers are independent contractors. In other words, they work on their own, but they lease their truck from a company. Well, both of those are responsible, both the driver and the company they're leasing their truck from, who's getting their load and helping them with picking up the deliveries. So there are two groups that are responsible, the driver and his company.
Can you give us some examples? I know there are many of them and they probably differ across the country, but some examples of rules and regulations that these drivers must follow.
Yeah, the rules that affect 18-wheeler and truck drivers are definitely different than individuals. The federal government regulates the driving of trucks, of heavy trucks, of large trucks, and they have certain rules that drivers have to follow. One of those that I've seen come up on several cases is drunk driving, truck drivers who are drunk and driving. So most states, the legal limit for blood alcohol is 0.08% blood alcohol. It used to be 0.1, now it's 0.08. For a truck driver, it's half of that, so it's 0.04. So that means that if a truck driver, the night before he drove, really tied it on and drank a bunch of beer or drank a bunch of liquor and got kind of a little drunk the night before and went to bed, let's say at midnight, gets up at 6 o'clock to start driving his truck, he might still be drunk. Whereas, someone who is he may be like 0.06 or 0.07. So I recently had a case where the driver admitted to me in his deposition that he had been drinking the night before. I think he underestimated how much he drank. And when he had the accident involving my clients, injured my clients, he was like 0.06. So that's legal to drive a car at that level, but it's not legal for a truck driver. And so I've seen that. I've seen that many times where drivers, I've had several cases where truck drivers are drunk, which is just shocking to think that someone's driving an 80,000-pound vehicle and they're drunk. It's criminal. It's criminal negligence, and in some cases they get prosecuted by the authorities for criminal negligent homicide.
In your experience, do you feel like, I'm sorry, did you have more to say about that?
No.
I was just going to ask about the trucking companies. You mentioned, you've got the companies and you've got the drivers themselves. In your experience, do you feel like the companies are supportive of their drivers, especially when they get into these accidents?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's one of the things that I've seen happen is as soon as the accident happens, the drivers all have instructions in their trucks about what to do in case of an accident. And I've seen these documents. We've gotten them in litigation. And usually one of the first things, like the first thing on the list is call the police, right? Or make sure the police are called. The second thing on the list is generally to make sure everyone's assess the injuries, your injuries, and anybody else involved with you. Get EMS out there. But usually about the third thing on the list, sometimes the second thing is call the company. And they're instructed to call the company so that they get the company's investigator to come out there and start coaching witnesses about what to say, especially their driver, taking pictures, downloading data that they can get from the truck and whatnot, and essentially affecting the scene and already controlling the case in their favor. So drivers, the companies certainly have an interest in what's happening with the driver and controlling the driver after an accident. And that's really kind of what's really important, I think, to hire a lawyer in an 18-wheeler case as soon as you can. I mean, evidence disappears very quickly in 18-wheeler cases I've seen.
Very good advice there. But I've read stories and heard about cases where companies possibly coach the driver some way or maybe push them over the limit when it comes to these rules. I know sleep is a big regulation, an area of regulation for drivers. Do you ever see that type of pushing the limit a little bit too much?
Yeah, I mean, drivers only get paid if they're racking up miles, if they're moving their cargo from one spot to the next spot. They don't get paid to park their trucks on the side of the road. They don't, they get paid by the mile often. So they are encouraged to work as hard and as long as they can. They're supposed to work within the limits that the law says for how many hours that they work. But those limits are pushed. And in fact, where I've seen it too, often in several cases I've handled, is where drivers drive in conditions that they shouldn't be driving in, whether that be fog or rain or snow, or just bad hazardous weather conditions. And the federal rules that govern drivers tell drivers that if the conditions on the roadway are so hazardous that you can't drive, you got to park your truck. You can't drive anymore. And I've had cases where the fog was so bad that drivers on the road said they couldn't see 50 feet. And the truck drivers driving at highway speeds with an 80,000-pound truck when he can't see 50 feet in front of his truck. Well, the truck should have been parked. But he doesn't park his truck because he doesn't get paid if he's sitting on the side of the road. Because his company wants him to get from A to B as quick as they can. And if the driver's got to drive in hazardous conditions, he just drives in those conditions. And accidents happen in those situations. So yeah, the companies certainly, I think, push the drivers because of the way they're paid often. If they were paid by the hour, I don't think you'd see this happen, because they'd park the truck on the side of the road and they just get paid their $20 or $25 an hour, whatever they're making. But that's just not the way they're paid. They're paid by the mile. And the companies are encouraged drivers to drive, I think, overtime and in bad conditions for sure.
I've had plenty of truck drivers whiz past me in the middle of a pouring rain or storm as well. I know what you're talking about there for sure, that pressure a little bit to get there. Josh, explain to us what it means to victims of these 18-wheeler accidents. Say I'm in one of these accidents, and when you as a lawyer come in and you hold the company accountable, does it really change policies?
I think it does, because, and I think I've seen it in cases where I took the deposition of, say, the safety official for a company, and recently in a driver that was driving in the fog, I can think of, where I think they realized that they didn't even follow their own rules and they weren't following the federal rules, and they want to change things. So I think when they get caught, they change things. Also, I think for insurance reasons, they have to too, because they don't want to lose their coverage. So I think if they have too many violations, too many lawsuits against them, if they injure too many people on the road, they may not be able to get any more insurance, and then they're parked, because the government requires every 18-wheeler to carry at least $500,000 in insurance. Most trucking companies have $1 million policies, but the minimum is $500,000 for a truck driver. So per truck, obviously, but so it's very important. They have to have insurance to drive. So I think they get too many lawsuits or too many claims, and they don't get any insurance. So
to wrap up here today, Josh, just again, if I'm involved in an accident involving one of these 18-wheelers, what should I do? When should I hire a lawyer? Is it important?
Yeah. I think, like I mentioned, it's critically important in the truck driving case and truck driver accident case where you're hit by an 18-wheeler that you hire a lawyer as soon as you can. I mean, first thing is obviously your medical care. But I mean, if you have a loved one or some friend or someone who can call the lawyer for you right then and there, you need to, because more than anywhere else, evidence is going to disappear. The trucking company is going to work on at the time of the accident to control the case, to control their driver's liability, to coach their driver what to say. And the case can be radically changed from the moment of the accident because the truck driving company is on top of it from the very get-go. And so the person that's injured in the accident has to get on top of the case right away, too, to have any bit of a fighting fair chance, I think.
All right, Josh Hopkins, we truly appreciate all your time today and answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank all of you for watching this episode of Ask the Lawyers. We want to remind you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have all of these episodes with information that you can use. Check out AskTheLawyers.com as well when you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose.